Good morning. This is Alex. Welcome to Simmering Puppies. Today I want to talk about just some basic psychology with dog training. Now, I find that within dog trainers, we have this idea of the four quadrants, and it's a great concept and it makes complete sense. I just find that this has become like jargon between one trainer and the other, and the people who that kind of hire a trainer have no idea what they're talking about. It just doesn't help. So I'm going to try to simplify it. I'm gonna start with two basic scenarios that we have with our dog, and I'm gonna move on to just explaining like the e-collar and how that works. So I think that a textbook scenario is a dog barking at something outside the house. Now the dog is in the same dog that's barking at somebody through the window when there's nothing going on, chill in the house, just hanging out. It's a vibe. The moment happens when the dog is in that state of tension and it's responding with a bark. And the linchpin of what I'm about to explain is that every time that dog barks, he's feeling, or he or she is feeling, a state of tension. And they're relieving it by doing something about it and barking. And you're just getting a loop. It's like tension, barking, tension, barking, tension, barking. And it doesn't stop, and it's actually growing because it feels good that the dog can at least do something about it. And what you really want to do is you want to jump in and break that loop cycle, right? The tension and stopping it before it gets to bark. And I think the go-to that most people jump to is maybe putting something more interesting to the dog, right? So you'll give a really nice treat or something, we want to do something nice for the dog, right? He's upset. The problem is it's actually two-pronged. Is that the dog, first of all, is seeing that he barked and now he got a treat if he actually goes over and distracts himself with that treat. And I would say more importantly, if the dog is in a state of distress and it feels like it needs to do something about it, it's not in the mood to eat. It really wants to deal with a problem. These dogs, they come from wolves. They come from these are originally predatory animals. So it's really not that simple to just put food on the side. And often the dog will not go to the food and they'll just keep barking. And it's only getting worse. And what you need to do is you need to jump in when that tension comes in, and before it hits the barking, to actually break that cycle. And that's really where you want to be able to give some sort of correction. If tension leads to barking and that feels good for the dog, we need to, the same way that somebody bites their nails and we need to get them to stop, we're going to put a nail polish on them. We actually need to, and if it tastes bad, we need to actually put something equivalent to that nail polish that stops before the tension gets to barking. And that's going to be a correction. It's going to be our nail polish in that scenario. So you're going to want to use some sort of correction. I use an e-collar, and I find that works amazing. There are other ways to do it. I like this because it's impersonal and it keeps a really good relationship with the dog. Again, great. And now I want to move on to just another rung up and using that same kind of mindset. And that's my command touch, which you'll see in some of my shorts. And I explained it a little bit in I think some of my previous videos. Now, the idea of touch is basically we have general recall, right? We want to call the dog back to us when we want it around us. And you can do that just by giving the dog a treat. And again, most of the time when I'm teaching a dog a command for the first time, I'm using treats. After that, I move on to kind of other learning approaches. But that touch thing that's happening as instead of recall is, well, first of all, the reason I prefer touch is just that, again, when I want the dog to come back to me, I don't want it to be vague, just in the area, close enough that I could reach out and give a treat. I want you right here. And usually I want to be able to put a leash on you. So I go to touch just to be able to train the dog to come to the collar. And what I'm doing there is, again, our dogs love to get pet by us. It's one of the, I think, the most basic ways that we communicate with them. So I'm going to put out that hand touch as a way of signaling, here's a treat. You want it? Here's a pet. The dog comes over to the pet. He gets the pet. And at some point over the course of kind of doing those reps, the dog sees this as basically you handing them a treat. Oh, here's a pet. And they'll run to it. And the nice thing about it, similar to that tension to barking loop that we saw, or that we discussed earlier in this video, is that like when the dog comes in for that touch, the desire to get that pet is met exactly when it happens. The same way that as soon as the dog barks, it feels good and it releases that tension. Getting that pet happens as soon as the dog, comes into your hand. So that timing of when you're giving that positive feedback to the thing the dog was aiming for is instant. And that's ideal because that's like the strongest learning scenario. Every time I press the button, the thing happens. I press the button, the thing happens. I bark, I feel better. You cut that out. I want to get the touch. As soon as I come to him, boom, feels good. And like that's the strongest way to learn. Immediate results, zero latency. And then like you're just moving on to the e-collar, right? So like you have another scenario where a dog is kind of going through the trash, right? Or the dog is like, again, lunging after somebody. It's like a really negative kind of behavior. Again, the trash is leaving food all over your house. This is not like, proper integration into the house. Or the dog lunging after another dog or a person. Like this can be really like dangerous. Even the trash thing, more than being dirty, it can be dangerous. There could be something in there they can't have. So you're going to want to be able to give an instantaneous feedback that says like, that's not good. And so you'll use kind of like this red button on the e-collar, which is a boost. And it doesn't even have to be so high. Like these things go from 1 to 100. I keep mine at like 10, super low, just enough to say like to make it like not fun to do that. And that saved my dog and the dogs that I work with from a lot of really bad moments. We stopped the tension. We stopped like the tension. We stopped the lunging. We stopped, negative behavior that could really be unsafe for the dog. And the dog gets a lot more freedom in life because we know it's off the table. And like that leads to a dog that like, again, somebody comes to me, they have a dog 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old. And we can solve that very quickly. Like that dog has another like 10 years most of the time to actually have a really positive life. And like that is way better than all the time we could have spent just really fighting about like things that were just like, a big headache for us and the dog. And like that's the mercy of it, just to be like, oh, I really want you to feel good. I want you to have off-leash walks. I want you to have good interactions with people. I want you to be safe. Like this is the gifts we're giving our dog. And the other side of it is again this low, like the low stim button, right? So for often the dogs I'm working with, it's like level 1 out of 100. It's super low. Like I get a big kick out of it when I go to my like the training sessions with my clients and I have them put it on, and I show like this is the low stim, and like I don't feel it. And then I do like the 10 out of 100 and they're like, oh, I could barely feel that. I'm like, yeah, that's your window of operating this dog. You wouldn't even register it. So that low stim, like, again, it's off now, but I'll hold it and I'll give a command. And when the dog fulfills the command, I'll release it. Like that, that's like one of I found, just all the dogs I trained, that's really the moment where the dog like really settles into understanding that command. Like there's a whole bunch of like parameters you need. Like the dog, it has to be set up beforehand. The dog needs to understand the command. It has to know what it's aiming towards. But when a dog actually is like put into a scenario where like you're putting in like, okay, there's this tiny bit of tension, like you can barely register it, and the dog fulfills that thing and you release it, that goes, wow, I figured that out for myself. Like I solved that scenario. And like, again, if you've ever kind of been through something very difficult in life and you kind of got to the other side of it and like you've met success on it, there's like a real feeling of like, wow, I saw what I did there. Like that feels huge. And like that works the same way with dogs. They're so similar to us. And like being able to get a dog to sit in that way or to, go to their place, or again, all these different commands that we use, like that is usually the most beneficial way to teach a dog how to do it. And you're basically, you teach them the command, you show them, basically how to fulfill it. You integrate that low stim, they kind of solve it. Like that dog is rock solid, again, for 10 years, 15 years, depending on the dog. And like, that's the greatest gift you can give to a dog, just being able to get them to sit, do the kind of, sit, come, all these different commands. Like having that for 10 years, a dog that has that freedom and that kind of like life, that's huge. And it's again coming from the understanding of like what is going on in the dog's head in that moment. Like again, this e-collar is basically being able to um, set up a scenario where the same way that dog felt tension, bark, tension, bark, and it's doing that loop. You're basically setting up a scenario where there's like that little bit of like, oh, like I really need to figure this out. And they can kind of get that kind of self, fulfilling signal and that kind of feedback in a way that you can control. Like, yeah, I don't want you to lunge. I don't want you to do this. And I want you to do this. I want you to do this. I often explain to my clients that, like, this is do it and this is don't do it. Yes and no. And, like, that's really helpful. Like, the binary approach with dogs is super helpful. I think it makes it more clear for them. They feel relieved that you have a way to communicate with them clearly. And almost everyone who I work with on the e-collar comes back to me months later saying, oh, like my dog, whenever I pull this out, they are thrilled. They know that we're about to have a really great adventure. We're going to do some really cool stuff. It's going to be exciting. And again, like I think the dog ends up seeing it as like just the greatest thing you ever brought into the house. And like that's a real moment where you kind of cross that line. You're like, oh, like my dog is like loving it here. Like we're having a great time. And yeah, I just think like the biggest takeaways from this video is that like understanding the loops that are going on in your dog's head. Often like it's just kind of like something needs to happen. I did something about it. And you kind of want to just be able to step in and kind of monitor that loop. And yeah, your dog will thank you for it, and you'll thank yourself for it, for stepping in. And again, I really think what you're just looking at is just when you kind of understand this approach, is just years and years with a dog that's like your best friend, and like the things that you can do with this. And yeah, I'm wishing you well. This is Alex, Submarine Puppies, and like usual, yeah, you can.